movement, and he goes by the name of Sean Butler. How you doing,
What's happening,
Sean?
guys? How you doing?
Yeah, I mean, going through the motions, my friend. How are you?
I'm all right. I can see my camera's doing a little bit better on your software
look at
today.
this. Look at that.
You know why, Sean? It's because you claimed yourself as Levy out now, so your cameras are all working in the studio. That's what it is.
You know what? The best part about it is, right? I've just noticed in your settings that you can flip flop on the video. So I'm going to flip from one side to the other. See if it changes. Does it change? Oh, it's not changing anymore. It was changing in the background. Doesn't matter. Forget about it.
Sean, can I put the salmon and trout away? Do I need to bring out the salmon and trout?
Yeah, look. Yes, you can. Like, I think there's nothing really. I said it on my stream just now. Like, I don't know what the reasons why this slot thing's fallen apart. So it's not actually about. It's not conditional. It wasn't conditional on what's happened this morning. Because if Arne slot was just leveraging us for a better payday at Feyenoord, then then it's not necessarily about Daniel Levy this time. But generally speaking, I got to the point where, I separate the past, the present, and the future when it comes to my reflections on Daniel Levy and Enoch. And I've never been a part of the Levy out crowd because I don't share the same historical reflections on his tenure, especially from 2002 to like 2018-19. I thought he did a pretty good job. And then obviously the last 4 or 5 years, I think that it's been at best a plateau, at worst a step back. But over the last 18 months, the series of mistakes, the frequency of them, and the kind of magnitude of them has kind of got me to a point where, like I've been saying it on my channel for a year. Like he's taken the club as far as he can. Any of the strengths of his capabilities, we've seen the things that he's good at. He's done well out with the off-field stuff, and he's taken the club to a position now where the only thing that's left to do is to fix the football side, and he ain't got a clue how to do that stuff. And so, yeah, like today is the kind of straw that broke the camel's back for me. Regardless of whether or not Slot was using us or whether Daniel Levy bulked at the price, then yeah, it kind of leaves me with no position. It's an uncomfortable reality, but essentially, yeah, I'm now Levy out. And I have to be, I'm kind of being disingenuous to my own.
Can I just confirm that's no sarcasm there, yeah?
No, I'm serious. And I don't think it really matters, even if, out of all of this kind of weird turmoil, even if like by hook or by crook, an opportunity arises and Nagelsmann somehow manages to be the manager at the end of in a couple of weeks, or whether Poch, I don't think any of those things are going to happen. But even if there's a weird scenario, a weird turn of events where something like that materializes, it's not by design, it's by accident. It's a kind of feeling your way through the dark, and and we'll see where we go. But I don't think it's going to get any better. I think it's going to get worse. And like I say, I'm like it's a shame. But you have to kind of, if you're true to yourself and you're being sincere as a fan, myself, I have to kind of, just reflect on where we're at. And I think that the present looks absolutely atrocious. And I think that the future looks incredibly opaque and ultimately bleak with this guy at the helm. A lot of people will say it's taken you too long to get there, Sean, and so it's fair enough, whatever. It is what it is. But at the moment, it's the club's a laughing stock and we're rudderless without any kind of clear direction. And ultimately, he's the guy who's in charge of it. So, yeah, hopefully maybe the Qataris fail in their bid to buy Manchester United and they turn their attentions elsewhere. I don't think that they will, if they don't get Man United, they'll just forget the whole thing. I think they'll look for somewhere else. And I read this morning that maybe West Ham are a target for them. Surely we could be a more attractive option than West Ham. So it'd be nice to see if one of them came along and went, okay, Daniel Levy, here's your 6 billion or whatever you want. And then we hand over to someone who can employ people that know how to, release the stranglehold of decision making on things that that they're not experts in.
Sean, Sean, there's been a couple of reports now, one from Sky Sports and one from Sammy Mockbell of the Daily Mail, saying that the stumbling block for the Arne Slot deal was a £15 million fee that Feyenoord have been demanding from Tottenham and which we have balked at. If that is true, what's your stance if that was the stumbling block in this deal?
Yeah, I'd be surprised. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, but I'd be like, it's unusual for Daniel Levy to scrimp on manager transfer or manager fees, right? I know that we were trying to figure it out on the stream I did earlier. What was the record fee for a manager compensation package? And I think we worked it out that it was Nagelsmann leaving Leipzig to Munich, but this would be second, allegedly. Which is it's a lot of money, but I actually don't think it is a lot of money. If you sign the guy on a 5-year deal with amortization, that's 16 or whatever, it's 13 million pound difference. That's like £2.5 million per season over a 5-year contract. You know, it's irrelevant, and it's such a cornerstone and an important, an essential element of, like, it doesn't matter how good your team is. If you haven't got a good manager, you're not going to win the league, right? Look at Chelsea, for example, right? So, you know, to bulk over 13 million quid or whatever the number is, 6 million, 10 million quid, it seems bonkers to me. And I'm even more surprised because usually Daniel Levy, the one thing he doesn't mind spending money on is managers. So, yeah, it's mad, and I'm really disappointed. I'm angry, and I've got no idea where we're going to go from here. And if it's all about 10 million quid or whatever, then it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. No other word for it.
And you think managers now? I mean, we're starting to see managers. I mean, second time really, second managerial search in a row. We're seeing managers kind of, well, either we can't get deals over the line, or they're rejecting us from left, right, and centre, whatever PR you want to believe. But do you think now that for the first time, like this hierarchy is becoming a significant stumbling block to hiring these managers, and they're really looking at this club as not an opportunity, but as a potential hazard, as opposed to something that they can take on and believe in?
Well, it appears that way. I don't think it necessarily should, right? Because I think we were talking about this on one of your panel shows a couple of weeks ago. Like, to me, the fact that Conte and Mourinho's failed at Tottenham, there's no one that's going to come in that has the managerial caliber or the kind of gravitas behind their brand as strong as those two. And if they failed, then anyone else that comes in, for me, has got a free hit. You know, like if they don't succeed, well, they could say, oh, well, neither did the two big boys that went before me. And if they do find success, then it will be a catapult for their own brand to the heights of which hasn't really been seen, because no one's done it before them. So I don't really see it as, I don't think it should be seen as a threat. I think it should be seen as an opportunity for up and coming ambitious managers to come in there and try and do what the big boys haven't done. But ultimately, I think, you know, it's probably quite a small community, and, you know, I think that you can only kind of read between the lines and imagine that the brand of Tottenham, like the idea of managing Tottenham and working with Daniel Levy right now, is such a toxic poison chalice that no one wants to touch it with a 12-inch barge pole, or 12-foot barge pole, I should say. And that, to me, is again another reason why, if that is the case, then Daniel Levy, you know, really has to, at bare minimum, step back from his chairmanship role, because who's going to want to come in if he's still the guy here to deal with every day?
Because I was saying before, like, and I agree with you. Everything right now at Tottenham, when you look at, like, from the outside looking in, everything should be in place for it to be a massive opportunity. Like, there has to be. The only real reason I can't see managers looking at as an opportunity is because of the hierarchy. I don't really see any other reason why a top manager would look at us and think, I don't want to be part of this. It can only be the hierarchy, can't it? What else can you see as something that's holding us back?
Yeah, maybe the impending departure of Harry Kane, presuming that he does go. You know, I've seen the statistics. Someone shared around like a screenshot of how many points Harry Kane's goals have, like, sort of gathered for Tottenham in this season. And I think from memory, it was like 27 points or something. And so if you take that number of points away from our current total, we'd have something like 36 or 37 points, which would mean would be relegation fodder. And so I know that it's obviously not as easy or clear as a conversation to say, you take away Harry Kane, you take away those points, Tottenham are relegated, because obviously there'd be somebody else in there, and you'd hope that the team would be able to kind of pivot and find other ways to score goals. Like, that's what most good teams can do. But ultimately, I think that the takeaway would be, if Harry Kane is leaving, then this club is no better than a relegation candidate at the moment, given the contribution that he has and how impossible it's going to be to replace him. And it looks likely that Harry Kane probably will, you know, whoever the manager is, whether it happens this season or at the end of next season, at some point within the managerial tenure of the next guy through the door, they're going to be without Harry Kane in all likelihood, and that is probably a terrifying prospect, for any manager to deal with.
Should we even be having these conversations with managers while the sporting director search is still at large at the moment? I mean, how can a manager agree to a long-term project of rebuild when they don't really understand the structure of what the structure of the club is going to be just after they join? I think, isn't that also a massive stumbling block, surely?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is true, but there was people in the chat earlier on the video that I was doing that was saying, and Brian was saying it as well. And he has some sort of source or whatever that's saying that Tottenham have decided to not hire a director of football. Now, I've not seen that anywhere from anyone credible. I don't know if you guys have heard that.
I've saw that Spurs might not go for a director of football, but potentially a head of recruitment instead. I have read that.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's what they're leaning into then. Yeah, in any event, look, for me, Scott Munn, I've looked into a lot of Scott Munn's history, and he might have the caliber and the credentials to be able to run a footballing group like City Football Group. But I think that, owners that operate multi-club systems like Manchester City, again, there's very few success stories. There's lots of failures. The City Football Group is a success story. Scott Munn's success at Melbourne was in no small part because of the beneficiaries of working under an incredibly well-financed City Football Group from the Abu Dhabi Group. So, I don't necessarily think you can take away too much from Scott Munn's history and figure out whether or not his skill set is more around just organizational management rather than actual football nous. And consequently, I don't think he's going to be the guy that should be, sort of conferring with whoever the manager is around any decisions. I think you do need a football specialist in a director of football role. I don't think Scott Munn's the guy. So until you have that person in place, whoever that is, it's difficult to see who the manager will be, and it's difficult to see what decisions can be made with the players that we have and what we don't have, and whether or not you can even convince Harry Kane or people like that to stay. So the whole thing's a shambles, mate. It's a whole bunch of chicken and the eggs, and the very first thing in that line for me should be a director of football, but it seems like that's the furthest, or at least from what we can tell from the media rumours, that seems like there's no clear indication of who that's going to be. And now with the managerial search back to square one, I don't know what to say. It's shambolic, isn't it?
Yeah, and they were going on and on about they need a young, progressive manager coming up through the ranks. I mean, they've now burnt Nagelsmann, Poch, Company, Alonso, and now Arne Slot. I mean, who else is there to turn to in that ilk?
Well, you think about if we balked at the price of, again, whatever the number is, 10, 15 million quid, whatever for Arne Slot, then you can chalk Ruben Amorim off because he's got a 30 million euro release clause. I think that drops down to 25 or something in the summer, but that's going to be too much unless Tottenham value Amorim at twice the value of Slot, which I don't think is plausible. And Nagelsmann, of course, is also still under contract technically. He's on gardening leave, so you have to pay out some significant compensation for him. So I think you can slice both of them off. I even think that Ange Postecoglou's got some compensation baked into his contract. So, I think you're probably going to find that Tottenham go after a manager that isn't currently with the club. So it's either going to be Rodgers or maybe like a Luis Enrique, Lopetegui, or whatever his name is, the guy who might be leaving Wolves. He might be out of the door soon. I don't know where else to turn, but yeah, I think if Tottenham can't be bothered to pay £13 million compensation for what appeared to be a first choice, then to me it would suggest that we're going to go for someone that's currently out of work.
Would you be completely surprised if Ryan Mason gets given the full-time job?
If he does, there'll be. I think that there'll be absolute. There'll be carnage. I think there'll be riots outside the training ground and the stadium, not just protests. I think there'll be absolute riots. I don't think we haven't seen anything really in the last couple of months from Ryan Mason to think that he has, he might have got us playing marginally better football, but ultimately the results weren't any good. And also, I don't think he ever had a plan B. Like every time we started games well, or we had some sort of upper hand, once the manager we were competing against tweaked something, like in the Brentford game, as soon as Damsgaard came on, Brentford looked like an entirely different outfit, and Ryan Mason just sat there kind of doing this, scratching his chin, but didn't really have any ability to kind of pivot himself. So again, I think it's crazy to think that a guy that hasn't got any actual first team managerial experience can, it's the hubris on him to think that he can step into the Tottenham job just because he's been around the club for a few years. He has to go and earn his stripes somewhere else. Most 90% of other managers that are coming up go and figure out, learn on someone else's dime in the lower leagues. And
what about Graham Potter?
What about him? I think. I mean, that's probably not. It's probably more plausible now because I guess he's out of contract. I don't think his time at Chelsea did him any favors, but I think he was set up to fail at Chelsea anyway. At this stage, I didn't want him. He was sort of 5th or 6th on my list at the start of the search. But at this stage, if you're going to give me, the managers that are left that haven't turned us down yet, he's probably creeping up the top of the list right now. I think he's got something about him. He did a good job. It took him time though at Brighton. It took him 3 years. The first year he didn't do very well at all. Second year they started to get things going. Third year, he got the best out of them. So again, if he does come in, you have to be patient with him like we haven't been with other managers, I guess.
Sean, always a pleasure to speak to you, my friend. Great to have you in the club, and we'll speak to you very soon.
Cheers, guys. Take it easy.
Nice to see you, Sean.